Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another lovely Thursday evening. It's just started to rain in Milton Keynes, but I don't know about anyone else. And tonight we've got a special guest joining us, Gill Nowell. I'd like to introduce you. Comes from EVA England, which is the Electric Vehicle Association for England. Hello, Gill. How are you?
Hi, Will. I'm very well, thanks.
So the first time we met, I think I took you to the station, didn't I? Someone said, any chance you could take this lady to Milton Keynes train station? I said, sure, jump in. And that was our first meeting, I think, from Fully Charged Live. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Will. Yeah, I was trying to remember, but you're absolutely right. Thank you very much.
So Gill runs EVclicks, which is a website that people upload imagery to about electric vehicles to enable other people to basically add those images into documents or presentations or whatever. So that's one aspect of you. You're EVA England, so Electric Vehicle Association England, one of their director, and also you work for Electrolink. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So could you give a brief history of how you got into this space and how you're here today?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Will. So my interest in electric vehicles really started back in 2012 when I was in a previous job role at a company called EA Technology, and I was tasked with setting up an innovation project to try and understand the impact of clusters of electric cars on the local electricity network. So really the underground cables, overhead lines that kind of act as the conduit for our electricity to our homes and small businesses. Because back in 2012, nobody really knew if, everybody bought electric cars on one street, everybody got home at 5 o'clock, plugged into charge, charging for hours overnight. That's a huge new load on that local electricity network, as opposed to national grid kind of high voltage network. So the My Electric Avenue project looked at that, and that's what really kind of sparked my love of all things electric vehicle and charging related. And I had my first test drive in a Nissan Leaf in 2012, and it's kind of the usual story that I was sat in the driver's seat and I said to the person in the passenger seat, so how do I turn it on? And they said, Gill, it is on. And I was like, wow. And I was just, mind blown, absolutely loved it, absolutely loved the drive experience, foot down and you're off. Brilliant. And that was a very early version Nissan Leaf. I had loads of test drives in different types of electric cars since then, over the years, until eventually the week before Christmas in 2019, had my old Saab 9.3 diesel written off, and that catapulted me into owning my own electric car. But I looked on the second-hand car market at that time. So my work really was a big driver, excuse the pun, for my interest in electric cars. For the last nearly 3 years now, I've worked for Electrolink. So Electrolink is the UK's energy market data hub. We're actually owned by the 6 distribution network operators across GB. And a big part of my job is to try and uncover opportunities to innovate with the vast amount of energy market data that we look after at Electrolink on behalf of the energy industry, and see how we can use that data in kind of really clever ways to support our transition to a smarter, more flexible energy network. And of course, electric cars are a massive part of that. So yeah, I get involved in lots of exciting project work, and it keeps my kind of EV enthusiasm alive.
Awesome, very cool. And whilst we're touching on that, can you touch maybe on some use cases from the Electrolink side of things and how that data can really, you can really understand it from our point of view?
Yeah, sure. So a big challenge that the distribution network operators have when it comes to electric cars is visibility. So they need to know where all these electric cars are being charged on their network. And actually, we know that although most people, when they buy an electric car, have a charging point, not everybody does. So some people are still using a 3-pin socket to charge their either a full battery electric car or plug-in hybrid EV. And And there is a notification process. So in theory, the network operator should be notified when a smart charger is installed at a property, but that doesn't always happen for one reason or another. So one of the projects I worked on was LCT detection, low carbon technology detection with Western Power Distribution and IBM. And that was really interesting because we looked at the patterns of consumption, of energy consumption at a domestic level, because as part of Electrolink's data set, we have the vast majority of the UK's energy consumption data going back over 8 years. And what we found was that through finding changes in energy consumption patterns, we could spot indications of electric cars charging on a particular piece of the low voltage network, or indeed solar PV, installed. So that's one project. A project that I'm currently working on with Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks and UK Power Networks, so two of the other distribution network operators in GB, is a project called Skyline. And this is really working a lot and engaging a lot with the automotive industry, with the electric vehicle charge point operators and installers, to try and understand what would encourage them or incentivize them to give an early notification of the likelihood of either an electric car being bought or a charger being purchased or even inquired about, to try and give the network operators really early visibility so that they can build up a picture of potential hotspots of electric cars. And this is all about ultimately trying to save you and I, trying to save customers money. Because if network operators can plan ahead of need and plan really effectively for any reinforcement that is required to facilitate sort of mass adoption of electric cars, then at the end of the day, that's going to be a benefit to customers. Because if they can plan ahead of need for that reinforcement work, then it's less disruption to customers and it's not as expensive.
Perfect. Excellently explained there. Thank you. Today you've been on LBC talking about Labour's announcement that they effectively want to copy what Scotland have been doing for quite a while and give a loan to buy electric vehicles. Do you think England should copy Scotland in that regard?
Yes, I do. And I've I've wanted this to happen for so long, Will. So the scheme in Scotland, I think it ran from 2016, and I believe that it was so successful. It had over 5,000 applicants, offering interest-free loans for not only new second-hand cars and motorbikes, I believe, but also it progressed to offering interest-free loans for second-hand EVs as well, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And yes, we absolutely do need that kind of scheme in England, I would suggest. But actually, one of my fellow EVA England board members pointed out to me earlier today that, as we know, a lot of people don't buy their cars outright, but they might prefer to lease. So lots of people are leasing electric cars. So yes, we do need interest-free loans, I would suggest, but we also need, a raft of other incentives as well. And what I'd really like to see is the plug-in car grant extended to cover second-hand electric vehicles.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's and also the government, again, I think it was it last week or beginning of this week, the weeks sort of blur into one, where they've talked about, Samantha's waving, hey Samantha, to Gill. They've talked about, they've actually announced that they're reducing that plug-in grant. What were your personal thoughts as opposed to EVA England's thoughts on that?
Yeah, personal thoughts. I thought, oh crumbs, is this a little bit too soon? I know we need to normalise electric cars, but they are still, in terms of cost, for most people, most EVs are more expensive than their petrol or diesel equivalents. And yes, of course, we need to look at kind of the ownership, total life ownership costs and so on. They are far cheaper to run. I charge my electric car for about 1 pence a mile. Sometimes I get paid to charge my electric car, really lower maintenance costs. all that really good stuff. But I think we do need to see those kind of grants sustained for a little bit longer. What's interesting though is that actually, and this is what I think I hoped would happen when that announcement was made, we're seeing quite a lot of the automotive manufacturers bringing their the price of their cars down to just below that 35k mark. So, you know, lots of those cars will now actually, of course, be eligible for the plug-in car grant, which is good news.
Yeah, because I think the Kia announced the Nero 2. I think didn't like perfect timing, and it was like £50 under. And yeah. And to be fair, Tesla have said that they would. It's obviously a reduced grant, but they're giving up to £2,500 off cars. But I think you have to take delivery by 5 days time, something like that. So
Wow.
got to be quick for that one. But yeah. So touching on EVA England, so Electric Vehicle England, how did that start? Whose idea was it, and how do you see it sort of progressing?
Yeah, thanks very much, Will. So I must say I'm absolutely loving being involved in Electric Vehicle Association England. I had a phone call at the start of lockdown last year from Daniel Brown, who is one of my fellow directors now at EVA England, but he's also head of transport at the REA. And he said, Jill, we're trying to get this brilliant thing off the ground. It's going to be loads of fun. Will you come on board? And it's to do with electric cars. So I was like, yes, of course I will. I'd love to. Of course, it is fun. It's also really hard work. Getting a community interest company off the ground, starting off with zero funding and having to find, you know, secure funding to get up and running, and all the systems and processes that need to be put in place to manage membership appropriately and so on.
We know that feeling.
Yeah. So loads of learning along the way, which has been brilliant, and actually loads of support and encouragement from our, what I'd say, sister organisations, so EVA Scotland, and, you know, the associations and emerging associations in Northern Ireland, you know, EV groups in Wales, EV groups Nexus, you guys, of course, at Tesla Owners UK, and many others. So it's been fantastic. It all started actually.
Oh, we may have, sorry, Jill. Just take it back one step. I think your internet may have just played up there. I don't know if you can hear it. Let's try that again. Sorry, Jill. Just go back. We just lost you for a brief second there.
So it all started over a ChargePoint chat.
Yep.
Yeah, great. So ChargePoint chat. Two of my fellow board members, Bridget Phelps, who is now our chairperson, and Alan Cooklin, both absolutely seasoned electric car drivers. I think Bridget has been driving her Nissan Leaf since 2013, so one of the really early adopters. And they got together over a ChargePoint. They'd never met before, struck up a conversation about the state of charging, public charging in England, and decided that actually there was a gap for an organisation to offer a voice to EV drivers in England, on a very similar kind of theme to EVA Scotland, that's been running very successfully for a number of years now. So a group of us came together, and we met weekly over Zoom throughout lockdown. We incorporated as a community interest company in June, July last year. And from the outset, it's always been the intention to be a membership organisation. We are a board of volunteers. Most of us have day jobs. We've been able to recruit one full-time member of staff, Christina Hink, who's absolutely amazing with everything that she does. And but we did need to open to members and to generate an element of income in order to then actually be able to go out for further grant funding, for example, and say, look, we mean business here. We are absolutely passionate about offering a voice to both current and prospective EV drivers in England against the backdrop of the need to do something, the need to really try and accelerate our transition to zero tailpipe emission transport. because we know that in the UK every year, 40,000 people die prematurely because of poor air quality, and mostly that is attributable to tailpipe emissions. So yeah, we need to do something, and that's why EVA England was set up, and that's what we're all about.
Yeah, and I love it. It's great. You reference offering a voice to your members. How do you do that?
Yeah, so before opening to members, which we did a couple of weeks ago, we've done an awful lot of outreach and engagement with the likes of the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles, Citizens Advice. We sit on the government's EV Energy Task Force, and so we've made sure that we have made those connections in order that when our members come to us with issues, we know who to go to. So we know how to vocalise those issues with the right people, whether it's in government or elsewhere. What we're also doing, Will, is we're actually on our third survey. So we've had a really great response to the survey that we issued recently to feed into the government's consultation on the consumer experience of public electric vehicle charging. So we've had over 1,200 responses from electric car drivers, yeah, we're packaging those responses up and we'll present that report to government. So that is us offering that voice and providing the voice of the EV driver to UK government. And we did the same actually. We took the same approach with the 2030 phase out date consultation as well.
And do you think actually government care? Do they want that information from a body like yourselves, or would they much rather individuals?
Yeah, so the survey that we ran on the state of public charging in the UK was actually reviewed and approved by the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles. So they absolutely want to use EVA England as a vehicle, to make sure that they understand actually what EV drivers on the ground are saying, thinking, and what they need to see happen next.
Awesome. Well, that's very encouraging. I mean, we've spoken a few times with government, and I think from our point of view, they've always wanted, like you say, someone or an organisation that represents a group of owners that they can go to and get those results without effectively asking the public in great numbers. And I think also some of the technical questions, that survey, for instance, the government survey, we posted the direct link out. And the number one question was, "Wow, that was hard work to fill that out." And yes, you could skip the various sections, and then we sent out the EVA England one, and everyone's like, "Okay, this is much more consumer friendly." And I think that's key. And someone like yourself, it's really great to see. How are you seeing the change take place with buying of electric vehicles, and maybe how do you see the future change with that?
I'm so glad you asked this question, Will. Thank you very much. So I ran probably safe to say, a pretty scientifically unstatistical poll on Twitter a few weeks ago. However, and nonetheless, I think the results are really interesting, because I asked the Twitter sphere, how did you go about buying your electric car? Because it just struck me that my experience, first I had a second-hand Nissan Leaf, and then I sold that on in order to fund my Kia e-Niro. First new car I've ever bought. I'm still excited about it, and I've had it since September. However, I had never actually seen a Kia e-Niro in real life. Never mind sat in one, never mind had a test drive in one. But I'd read the reviews, I'd skimmed the reviews, to be fair, and I know, because I've driven so many electric cars, that they are just a phenomenal drive experience, and you can't go wrong whatever electric car you buy, I think. I knew that the Kia e-Niro is spacious. I looked at the Model 3, but actually, within my budget, my circumstances, went for the Kia e-Niro as our, one and only family car for me and the children. And the first time I actually saw a Kia e-Niro in the metal was a few days after I'd paid my deposit and committed to my own purchase. My next door but one neighbour, one turned up on their drive, and it turns out that their 4-year-old son had said to his mum and dad, look, we need to get an electric car, Gill's got one, da, da, da. So I can't say that it was Ted's fault, that his parents got an electric car, but some electric cars now that you can only buy online. But how our purchasing habits are changing, and no matter, I think, who you are, probably buying a car is a pretty big deal. It's a big chunk of money one way or another. It's a big commitment. So I think for me, it's fascinating that, and it was reassuring for me that I wasn't totally crazy as well, that there were other people out there that had never even sat in the car that they had decided to buy. Awesome.
Perfect. We're just going to take a brief second break and just reference quickly our chosen charity of the year. I hope you don't mind, Gill. So our chosen charity of the year is still Mind, the mental health charity. So mental health affects us all, and we do these events as a sort of a bit of fun and interesting thing, but also to raise some money for our chosen charity. So Mind, the mental health charity, everyone's affected by mental health, regardless if you drive an electric vehicle or a petrol or even a diesel. Yeah, please consider going to justgiving.com/Tesla Owners UK. The end of that takes place, I think, this Saturday. That's when we start the changeover to a new charity. So I'd love to be able to hit that new, I think, £3,500 for the year. So yeah, a brief break just to say that, and now we'll get back to it. Thank you. So Gill, where do you get your electric vehicle news from? Is it Twitter? Is it?
Yeah, I scour. Yes, my morning habits are that I wake up at 7 o'clock, give my daughter a hug because she is inevitably right there next to me in bed. So we have a little chat, and then I check out the news, and I just Google electric vehicles, go to the news tab, and it all comes up like magic. And I keep an eye on Twitter, of course, and I keep an eye on LinkedIn. So that's how I kind of keep on top of what's going on.
That sounds good. Yeah, similar to me, I think. Yeah, perfect. Going back to EVA England, and I'm going to put you on the spot now. What do I get for my £20 per year? What are you going to give me?
You get, for your £20 a year, you have an organisation that is wholly dedicated to supporting your journey through electric vehicle ownership, one way or another. Whatever stage of that journey you're at, if you're EV curious, if you're on the fence, if you've just put your deposit down, if you've just made the decision, if you've got your electric car, if you're deciding what electric car to move to next, we are there to support you, and we are there to offer a voice into government and elsewhere for you. One of the first things that we did actually in lockdown last year was to run a prospective members survey, because from the outset, we really wanted to make sure that we are listening to what prospective members and now current members would want EVA England to do on their behalf. So we had just under 300 responses to that prospective members survey, and people have told us that 90% want policy and campaigning, 70% want unbiased advice on electric cars, 70% want support for local initiatives, and 60% would like to see discounted products and services as part of their membership package. So we've taken all that on board. One of the, I think, really exciting benefits that we've already been able to offer to EVA England members is that they currently will get £50 off any charger from the Right Charge website. And just today, we announced our partnership with Onto. So this is the brilliant EV subscription service. So you can try an electric car for 30 days or for as long as you want. by just paying a subscription, a monthly subscription. So as an EVA England member, you will get £50 off your first subscription to Onto. So we really want to, as well as the advocacy and the support and the guides that we have on our website, and when you sign up to become an EVA England member, you'll get an amazing, I think it's amazing, and I hope you will too, membership pack that is packed full of really useful information on electric cars, on charging, and pretty much everything you would wish to know as an EV driver.
Oh, perfect. That answers my question perfectly. What do you think existing electric vehicle what do you think existing electric vehicle drivers can do to help not only EVA England but the whole aspect of moving to electric vehicle?
Yeah, one of the things I did, which I'd like to see more of, was actually with Pod Point. We went into my children's primary school literally just before lockdown last year. I think we did this in February, and James McKeamy from Pod Point gave a brilliant talk to all the school children, and I took my it was a Nissan Leaf at the time into the school playground, and I was surrounded by all these really interested and enthusiastic young people who wanted to know about electric cars, you know, and I said, so what's different at the back of the car? And, you know, and they spotted that there's no tailpipe, for example. You know, I turned it on and it's so quiet. So I think for me, it starts in schools, and really trying to open young people's eyes to the need to move to zero tailpipe emission driving. And for me, that was a really nice way of doing it.
You're clearly reading my notes, because that was basically my next discussion point about children and school visits. And it actually ties into something that the Tesla Owners UK are doing for next year, for instance, which a few of our members will know about. But we've for the last 2 years probably been running a trial for exactly what you described, taking in electric vehicles into schools and showcasing them. And like Claire Cleveley has said, children really are completely on board. And once you explain those sort of basic principles, you can just see their mind just fully understanding it, which is really good. And our club are looking to do a minimum of 50 school visits in this coming year. So we look forward to maybe that's maybe a partnership possibility there with EVA England. We've got educational packs, for instance, that go to all the schools and colouring in things. That they happen to be all Teslas colouring in, I must add, but I'm sure we can find some others. So perfect. So do you think children understand instantly electric cars, or will we always have those people that have got maybe petrol head parents that don't want them to do?
I think it's fine, Will. I think because, you know, as I'm sure you do, I know lots of so-called petrol heads, but once they actually sit in an electric car and have that experience, then, you know, what's a petrol head? It's all forgotten. I'm sure there are exceptions, but that's generally my experience. So yeah, and I think it's you know, it's like, is it like recycling? You know, a number of years ago, not all that many people recycled, but then lots of school campaigns, and children were coming home saying, you know, we should be recycling this, you know, what goes in this bin and so on. So yeah, I definitely think there's hope, and I think the younger generation get it, you know, maybe even more so than the older generation sometimes.
Yeah, I think certainly from my experience of the school visits, that I think they definitely do. What events are you looking forward to once COVID hopefully releases us from lockdown? Any events for the year you're looking forward to, or maybe in the future?
Yeah, I am very, very much looking forward to Fully Charged Live Outside. Early September. So EVA England will absolutely have a presence there. And yeah, I'm incredibly excited about that. I don't think I've got over Fully Charged Live 2019 yet. It's like, whoa. And the highlight, I must say, the highlight of my lockdown last year was well, when we were just out of lockdown in early December, and I was invited to, you know, the first day opening of GridServe in Essex. So and seeing so many familiar faces, you know, in the EV community, it gave me such a boost. Yeah, so that was and what an interesting and brilliant sort of part of the charging mix, that electric forecourt idea. So can't wait to see more of those rolled out as well.
Yeah, and do you think 50 is realistic?
Yeah, I'd heard 100 actually. So so
it must be going up.
yeah, let's see. But I was very excited to see that there's one due, I hope, I guess if planning permission gets through, in Bromborough, which is not a million miles from where I am.
Awesome.
So I should get coffee.
Yeah. And what were your thoughts on GridServe partnership with Mr. Electric Highway?
Yeah, I mean, brilliant, isn't it? You know, so that's absolutely what we need to see happening. We hear so many problems with that network, with the Ecotricity network, but I think we also have to remember that actually, you know, it was a trailblazer back in the day. It was, you know, it was one of the such early charging networks. However, there clearly have been issues, but now I think GridServe coming in, partnering with Ecotricity, then, you know, lots of happy charging days, I hope, ahead for us.
Definitely. And what do you think the government's biggest hurdle is at the moment, and maybe also in 5 years' time?
Wow. Okay. So I think that maybe the biggest hurdle is there's still a big education piece, I believe, to be done around electric cars, and interestingly, Martin Afire is one of EVA England's honorary members, and you know, Martin is connected with Connected Curb, and they ran a survey recently that suggests that 64% strongly agree that government needs to do more to ensure that the public are properly educated about electric cars. And a significant percentage actually of those who were polled weren't aware of the 2030 phase out date, particularly in the 18 to 24-year-old age bracket. So I think there is still a big job to be done to overcome, you know, what are common misconceptions around electric cars, and that I think is a role that EVA England could really help fulfill.
Awesome. Now, my one request for EVA England, and you might have already thought of this, so feel free to take it as your own idea, is rental of equipment. So the one thing that Octopus Energy, one of our key sponsors, they give out a device that shows you the heat coming out of your house, right? So you can work out, you know, where losses in your home energy takes place. What about EVA England doing some form of pollution tester that I could rent? Or maybe it's free if I'm a member, and yeah, that's my idea, which I think would be awesome. And
yeah, I like that, and I think particularly outside schools, because it drives me insane, I must admit. You know, when I'm taking my children to or from school, although my son's on a bike these days, and I see parents sat there with their engines running. And yeah, it's one of my. So
I think I may get arrested in Milton Keynes in the coming few weeks, because I'm about to order a lot of signs, but that's another story for another time. But yeah, it's definitely a frustration, and yeah, it's hopefully we'll solve. And yeah, that was just my one idea that I just suddenly thought. I was like, oh, that might be a good thing, and for your members. We didn't want to touch on hydrogen. We're going to keep away from hydrogen.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah,
we're not going to touch on hydrogen. What other aspects of the electric vehicle world do you think has to change?
Yeah, so I think on the public charging front, And this actually comes from our recent survey that we did on the government consultation on the consumer experience of public charging in the UK. So I think we need to see a lot more done in terms of roaming. So we know that actually, and I'm just trying to find, so we know that, for example, out of the over 1,200 EV drivers that we had respond to this survey, 87% would welcome the ability to use one smartphone app across all public charge point networks, you know, for example. So, and I hope that that's where the government is heading, and I hope that that's where the charge point sector is heading. So, and we also find that 99% in terms of reliability of charges, so 99% of drivers think that charge point operators should be required to meet a certain standard of reliability. Yeah, with 93% of drivers thinking that 99% reliability in terms of a standard is fair. So yeah, I think that's where you know, public charging needs to move.
Perfect. We've got a question from Matthew. He says, are petrol cars going to need to come with a health warning one day, for example, at the end of TV adverts? I guess a bit like smoking was back in the day, and maybe fatty foods. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if they weren't allowed to advertise petrol or diesel cars anymore? But yeah, some sort of health warning I think would be quite appropriate. You know, I'm a runner. So I run most days. I try to, if kind of work and children allow. And if I run past somebody who's smoking, it's not a pleasant experience. But I find that, you know, if a car drives past with emissions coming out, you know, that is a really unpleasant experience as well. So it's a very, you know, air pollution, although it can be, you know, it's silent, and sometimes you can't see it. Sometimes you can see it. It's right there, and it gets to you.
Perfect. Another question from Matthew, actually, I missed it earlier on. Is it private cars or commercial vehicles that need to be a priority for the shift to electric vehicles to make a difference to the overall emissions? Private cars or commercial?
Yeah, I think probably both, actually. I mean, there's great incentives at the moment, aren't there, for sort of electric car, so company car schemes for electric cars, 0% benefit in kind, and I think that's been a real boost. But also, I think we should remember vans as well, because diesel vans, I believe, are responsible for 30% of all nitrous dioxide emissions on our roads in the UK. So encouraging you know, fleets of vans to make the switch to electric, I think, is really important as well. And I've recently been in touch with Highways England, actually, and they're doing a really brilliant try before you buy scheme for electric van fleets, which is proving to be very successful. But I think we need to remember that it's not just about cars, it's also about vans as well.
Perfect. So any advice on setting up EVA Wales? We have a couple of members in the audience from Wales that I'm sure would be desperate to have a scheme. Maybe there is already something in the works, but maybe some tips and tricks for those people.
Yeah, we've been talking with a couple of EV groups in Wales, and I was under the impression that there is an emerging sort of EV association for Wales. So I think it's one to keep an eye on. But if there is anybody watching who wants to be put in touch with who we've been engaged with, then happy to do that, and we'll always share our learning and how we've gone about things with other associations. Absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we've got at least Tom and Samantha watching that are definitely in Wales. I can see in the stats. How can the public get involved? It certainly strikes close to home the issues that tailpipe emissions cause. How can the public realistically help?
Yeah, so I think going back to the schools point is making sure that our children are aware, but also I think join EVA England and we can be your voice into government and elsewhere on these issues. And we've got COP26 coming up in November in Glasgow, and I can't say too much about what EVA England will be doing in the lead up to COP26, but you know, we have a plan, and I'm sure there'll be lots of opportunity for members of the public to get involved there. But yeah, do you know, if you have an EV, if you're thinking about getting an electric car, do have a look at the EVA England website and just, you know, do consider becoming a member. We'd love your support, and then we'd be able to support you.
I think we've had 3 or 4 people already signing up during this, so that's really awesome to see. Question for Gill: what do you think? Do you think there basically should be beauty spots with electric chargers, or do you think it's all about the? Sorry, that's my doorbell going in the background. Or do you think you know, it's more about that inter-motorway charging network to get you to those points?
Yeah, I think it's a mix, isn't it? So so I know that National Trust, most if not all National Trust properties have electric vehicle chargers, and I think they should be where, you know, at almost any destination, you should be able to, as an EV driver, you should be assured that you'll be able to get to where you need to get to or want to get to, and be able to charge when you get there. So I think absolutely, you know, electric car chargers in beauty spots, for me, it would be a yes. You know, I plan my summer holidays, such as they are at the moment, on whether I'll be able to charge my car or not. So I've booked a weekend in the middle of Anglesey, or a week in the middle of Anglesey in July, taking the children, of course, and you know, and I've made sure that I'll be able to plug in my car to charge. So yeah, they need to be almost everywhere, don't they? You know, and at the end of the day, the great thing with electric cars is, although it's not recommended to regularly use a 3-pin socket at all, but you know, I'll be doing that on holiday just for a week, just to top up occasionally during that week.
Yeah, that's the beauty of electric cars. There's plenty of plugs. They just might not be the quickest always. So yeah, that's really cool. So touching back on EVclicks, could you explain a bit more about that, how that works? Have we got any Teslas on there? That's another question.
Yeah, so EVclicks, in the work that I do at Electrolink and elsewhere, I quite often need to find an electric car, or even a electric car charging point image. And I was finding that I could go onto the internet and I'd either have to pay for them, or they were very professional, very stylized, which is fine for a lot of uses. But I really wanted to find electric car images that were true to life. So I thought, I know, I'll do something about this. Came up with the name EVclicks, and in the first instance, I just set up a Twitter account, so at EVclicks, and invited people to donate their EV or EV charging images to EVclicks. Had a relatively good response, so very quickly set up a website, evclicks.co.uk. The idea being that all these images, these photos, are freely available to download and use. So they are open source images of electric cars, and they are for use by schools, for communities, for projects, for businesses, pretty much for anybody who needs to use them in aid of the transition to zero tailpipe emission transport. We now have almost 4,000 images in the galleries. And they are divided into makes of car. So we've got, I think, about 340 Tesla images. Always happy to have more if you want to send some in.
Yeah, I'm sure we need to up that number. We need to pump those numbers to plus 1,000, I think, at least.
Yeah. Let's do it. But we also have a gallery dedicated to the supercharger network as well. So we've got probably a couple of hundred images in there, maybe about 100 images in there. And I have to give a big shout out to the Plug Seeker, who some of you may know on Twitter and elsewhere. Plug Seeker has their own YouTube channel, because the Plug Seeker just reached out to me one day and said, Gill, can I help you sort these out into galleries, you know, make it a little bit more user friendly? yeah, so I'm forever grateful to the plug seeker for helping me out. Awesome. on EVclicks.
Yeah, it's all about teamwork in that regard. So Nick Goldring has said National Trust need to up their game effectively. He's saying that there's not enough National Trust properties. So maybe that's something that a survey needs to go out and reach out to National Trust. Yeah, I think there's a few. There is a few, but yeah, it sounds like there needs to be more. So that's
yeah. And just on that, Will, and thank you to the person who asked that question or made that statement. So yeah, there's brilliant National Trust properties just over the border from me in Wales, and there's one at Earthig, which is one of our favourite places to visit when we can. And you have to know it's there. And also at Chirk Castle, you have to know it's there because it's kind of hidden and in the undergrowth. So yeah, more can be done.
It's going to be tightened up. Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I apologise for that. Do you think? Can you hear me, Jill?
I can hear you.
Yes, sorry. Do you think clean air zones should be extended to more cities? Do you also think they should tighten up those regulations?
I think the answer is yes. Clean air zones absolutely should be extended to more cities. You know, I'll go back to the figure that I quoted earlier. You know, we know that in the UK, 40,000 people are dying too soon because of local air quality problems. And that's because of tailpipe emissions to a large extent. So yeah, absolutely. We need more clean air zones. And, you know, I know there's a lot of differing opinions on green number plates, for example, but they could be a really useful tool in terms of, you know, identifying EVs that could, you know, kind of go freely into those clean air zones, if you like.
Perfect. And I think this is probably our last questions, but unless there's anyone else that wants to jump in, feel free to do it now. But if you had a magic wand and you had an unlimited budget, what would you do at government?
Wow. So absolutely, I would say, right, 50% off all electric cars starting from today. You know, let's do it. And we'll throw in a home charger and we will treble the amount of public charges. So you don't have a reason. And what we'd say EVA England as well is, you know, please, if you can, make the switch. And please, if you can, make sure that your next car has a plug.
Yeah, I think all of our members, or most of our members at least, would agree with that. One person, last question. What's happening about making charging points accessible? Certainly an issue that we've come across and raised with Tesla for the supercharger network. Do you think there's any scope for EVA England to help with that?
Yeah, we've been talking to some organisations about this, and we're really proud of the fact and pleased to have Advocacy as one of our honorary members. So we're learning a lot actually in that regard, and absolutely recognise that that more needs to be done to ensure that chargers are accessible for wheelchair users and for, you know, for everybody essentially. But yeah, we're fully on board with needing to do more on that front.
Every time I say it's the last question, another one comes in. Do you think the 50 miles per hour speed limit on motorways to reduce pollution should apply to electric vehicles, or do you think it's not really true?
It's a bit disingenuous, isn't it, to think that electric cars should stick to 50 miles per hour speed limit because to reduce air pollution, because obviously we know that they are zero tailpipe emission, but then it gets into very murky water about them and us, I believe. So yeah, I think that would be, we would have to tread delicately there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. Well, I would just like to say a big thank you to you, Jill, for giving up your time for tonight, and also the EVA England, which, like you say, is a volunteer organisation. You're not getting paid for that. So a big thank you on behalf of your members and our members as well. Certainly, we've got a few that are joining as well tonight, so that's awesome to see. And yeah, just a big thank you to the whole team. for those that are watching, thank you for joining us tonight. We've just hit an hour, so that's perfect timing. And I just want to say, subscribe to us on YouTube for similar talks like this. And if you've got any comments that we haven't managed to get to you, or you're watching this after the event, please pop them in the chat, and maybe Gill will come on in a couple of days' time and maybe answer some of those. And you can obviously follow Gill on Twitter, Gill_Nowell, and reach out there, and obviously check out EVA England. Was there anything else you would like to plug that we've maybe missed as a sort of free plug?
I think we've covered everything, Will.
That's cool. And great. Well, thank you very much, Gill, and we'll speak to you soon.
Good night.
Cool. Night, everyone. Thanks a lot. Cheers.